Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Tennessee Achieves 100,000 student celebration. Really excited to celebrate this week and really excited about our first panel today. We've got three panelists and a moderator that really need no introduction, but I'm going to try my best anyway. A couple of real quick housekeeping items. All of the attendees are muted, your cameras are turned off, but there are a couple of ways for you to communicate with us. You will see there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. This is where you can ask questions that we will compile and ask our panelists at the end. So if you have questions for the panelists, please put them there. You'll also see there's just a general comment box where you can communicate with one another, any kind of running dialogue. But please feel free to connect with us in either of those ways, and we're going to try our best to get to as many of your questions as possible. Thanks again for joining us today. I want to thank our panelists, and I'm going to introduce our moderator today, who really needs no introduction, but the Tennessee Achieves Executive Director, our founding and only ever Executive Director, Ragsdale.
You can't get rid of me, that's why.
And all of our panelists, thank you guys for being here. Looking forward to it today.
Thanks, Graham. Let me just first echo Graham's excitement. We've been planning this for about 2 months now. So to kick off with Mayor Ragsdale, Randy Boyd, and Governor Haslam is a dream for me. So thanks to all of them for joining us. I'm going to do a brief introduction of our three panelists, give you about 30 seconds of statistics because it wouldn't be an introduction from Chrissy D'Alejandro without a few statistics, and then we'll jump right in with questions. First, a first-generation student from Cleveland, Tennessee, Mike Ragsdale served 2 terms as Knox County mayor before launching his company, Tennessee Strategies. Fun fact, he's been my boss in some capacity now for more than 15 years. So I started when I was 15, so there's that. Another first-generation student from Knoxville, Randy Boyd, serves as the current president of the University of Tennessee, founder of Radio Systems Corporation, and my personal favorite, chairman of Tennessee Achieves. And last but not least, Governor Bill Haslam served as the 49th governor of Tennessee. I had to look it up, Governor. I didn't know you were the 49th. And was the former mayor of Knoxville. Of his many accomplishments, it's no surprise that Tennessee Promise is my favorite. So as Graham said, we're here to talk about really the Tennessee Achieves, Tennessee Promise, Knox Achieves story, the evolution of the program as we know it today. But not too long ago, in 2008, when we launched Knox Achieves, we began by enrolling 267 students into the program, and we were all thrilled. I remember how excited we were at this, what we felt like was a great accomplishment, especially considering the overwhelming majority of students were our target student, first generation, and students from lower income backgrounds. If you fast forward to today, obviously, we're celebrating the enrollment of our 100,000th student. We've recruited and trained 61,663 volunteer mentors over the past 12 years. Our students have given back 2.96 million community service hours, which to me is just incredible in its own right. And we've served nearly 400,000 students since we launched 12 years ago. So thrilled to be here, thrilled to share the story, and obviously just feel incredibly lucky to be a part of this story. Mayor, we're going to start off with you. So first question is for you. When you became Knox County mayor, a major priority was education. Explain the path that led to the launch of Knox Achieves in 2008.
Well, we had a mantra in the mayor's office that we wanted to make every school a great school and give every child in Knox County the opportunity to get a great education. And I felt like we were making some really good headway in K through 12 education. But we learned really quickly that if you just stop as a high school graduate, your success path is going to be challenging, to say the least, and incredibly diminished. So we started looking at what do our kids do when they graduate from one of our Knox County high schools. And typically they fell into 3 categories. One was they had good grades, they had an opportunity for Hope Scholarship or other type of scholarships, and they had a path that they could possibly go down. Second group of kids had parents who had the economic blessings that they could send them to college or help them get started in a business. But then we also had a very large third group of young people. And in their case, most, if not all their parents had never been to college before. They had as much potential as the other two groups, but for a variety of reasons hadn't utilized it. And their career path going forward wasn't going to be very well defined. So we started thinking, what can we do to help them? And the idea of a program where you could go to a community college free of charge really resonated with us. And Chrissy, as you'll recall, you did a lot of research on it. And we looked at things across the country. How could we do something like this? And then we went and talked to some folks, then Mayor Haslam, before he was Governor Haslam, and had a meeting with Randy out at his house one day. And then we recruited some folks like Rich Ray and Tim Williams and others who helped us get this up and going. So we felt right out of the chute that it could have a big impact. And you're right, when we had the 260 plus students who were enrolled in the program originally, we thought, man, this is a home run. And to those kids, I'm hopeful that it was. And it took off and continued to grow, and it's still being, because of a lot of great leadership, not to mention what Governor Haslam did with the Tennessee Promise, it's still going strong today. So that's sort of how it started, up in the city county building on the 6th floor with a lot of writing on a whiteboard and a lot of research, to where it is today. I think it's one of the premier programs in the country.
Thanks, Mayor. And if you remember, you had an initial meeting with Randy. I've heard you guys tell the story many times. He had a coffee, you had your signature Diet Coke. But Randy, I've heard you refer to that moment as a Pearl Harbor moment for you. Can you explain what you mean by that? And also why you were eager to jump on board and to be so supportive?
Well, thanks, Christy. I don't want to waste this moment and not take advantage of the opportunity to say congratulations to you, to Graham Thomas, and to everybody that's so dedicated to this cause. So for the last 12 or 13 years as the chairman of Tennessee Achieves, I've told everyone, I'm the guy that talks about all the great work that Tennessee Achieves does, but it's easy for me to brag because I don't actually do any of the great work. It's your team that does all the great work. So thank you for getting all this done. And everybody on this Zoom knows that you guys work tirelessly to make all this happen. So thank you for the dedication and the passion and the incredible accomplishment that you've had. Well, so my story was when it started when Mayor Ragsdale came over to my house for breakfast one morning. I was actually invited him to hit him up to help me make Knoxville the most pet-friendly city in America. And he was very cooperative. He said, yes, I'll help you with everything that you're asking for if you'll do me one favor. And then he shared his vision of what we now call Tennessee Achieves, to be able to send young people that might not otherwise go to technical or community college or any college because of their income or lack of family support. And we came up with this idea of providing mentorship and last dollar scholarship and asking them to have some skin in the game with the community service component. And when he shared that with me, as I described it to many people, this was my Pearl Harbor moment. What I mean by that is I can imagine what it must have been like in 1941 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt comes on the radio and says, our country's been bombed. You know, we must stand for freedom and rise up and fight back. And I just wonder at that moment, how many people heard that call to action and said, yeah, I don't know. My kids are playing soccer. I got this new job. It's just not a good time for me. I mean, when he shared this with me, it was such a compelling argument, such a compelling vision. There's no way that you could say no. And the great news was we were able to take that vision that you and the mayor had created to people across the community. And one of the most inspiring things about the whole Tennessee Achieves story is how so many people, mentors and donors, all stood up. You'd share the idea. Some would be willing to write a check. Some would be willing to be a mentor. Some would be willing to do both. But it caught on, and everybody across our community stood up to, I think we had that first year 190 mentors and mentioned 267 students. We raised over $3 million in cash and pledges in the first 90 days. It was incredible to see the tremendous support we got from our community.
Yeah, I remember that meeting so well because you literally called about 30 minutes. So we had spent about 6 months working on this idea. And then in 30 minutes, it became a reality when you said, I've raised 2.6 million in cash and pledges. Let's go do this. So it was a very poignant moment in my life.
I should add how I became the chairman. So I go to Tim Williams and Rich Ray, as Mike mentioned, and says, look, I'll raise half the money if you'll be the chairman. I said, okay.
And now you're the forever chairman. I don't know who got off like the easiest in that space. Well, Governor, I remember you in those early days, and I won't talk about the fateful meeting we had in my office talking about Knox County. But during your 8 years as governor, you were known as the higher education governor. I spoke to many groups nationally during your tenure as governor, and I always opened up with, yes, our governor is better than yours. So just to set the stage always. But I've often heard you say that Tennessee is plagued with a culture of low expectations. Why was providing the opportunity to earn a college credential important to you? And do you think it addresses this challenge?
Yeah, first of all, any talk should start off with confession. And I should confess that though I get all the credit for Tennessee Promise and stuff, the reality is that when this idea, when Mike and then Mayor Ragsdale and Randy came to me with this idea, I didn't think it was a good one. If you know Mike and Randy, you know that both of them are incurable optimists. They hear an idea and they're like, let's go. And I thought, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea. So much so at one of our very first meetings, we actually met for lunch, I think at like Panera and Turkey Creek. I was so like not taken with the idea that I literally rode my bike to the meeting from my house thinking, well, at least I'll get some exercise if the meeting doesn't go anywhere. So like it shows how foresighted they were and how the opposite I was, I guess. So, but I think, Chrissy, the answer to your question is, I think Tennessee, we have thought too little of ourselves for too long. And included in that is a lot of folks who just think, we're not a college family. Well, I'm not college material. And, you know, if you look at, again, Mike and Randy are two great examples of people, first generation college students. My dad was a first generation college student. All of us can talk about how it changed the trajectory of our lives. But to do that, to have it change the trajectory of your life, you have to believe that there's a possibility it can happen. And too many Tennessee families just said, we can't afford that. We can't pay for that. The beauty of this program was that from the very beginning, we said free, period. Doesn't matter how much money you make. We didn't put a bunch of qualifiers. It was free. And the simplicity of that idea, you know, I used to be in the retail business, free sales. The free sells very well. And the beauty of that idea, the simplicity, and then to follow that up, and you know, Randy was insistent upon this from the beginning, it wasn't going to be an organization with a lot of overhead and a lot of bureaucracy to it. It's like, we're going to raise this money, we're going to put the like 99% of it's going to go back to students to help. And I think, Chrissy, you and your team have kept that going and have kind of modeled what it looks like to be efficient. And you know, I used this example 100 times when I was in government about, you don't have to set up this huge bureaucratic organization to achieve great things. So for me, it was about that, saying all those folks who said, well, that's not, we're not college people. Now the conversation went from around dinner tables from could we go to college to where will we go to college?
I completely agree. I mean, literally thousands of stories that I could share about students who've said, I never thought that college was an option because I couldn't afford it. And also no one in my family had gone before. So even if the money was there, I just didn't know exactly how to navigate what can be a really complicated path for students. So completely agree. Mayor, I often remark that Tennessee Promise was an overnight success that took 6 years to accomplish. Why do you think this program resonates with families and students across Tennessee?
I think Governor Haslam summed it up very well. I think it's been a transformational program from the standpoint of like many Tennesseans felt like this is just something we can't afford or we don't even know where to start. And so this program has changed that. We had a lot of good momentum coming out of Knox County. Then when we started going to surrounding counties, that momentum continued. And then under Governor Haslam's leadership, and I think he would give a significant amount of credit to his unpaid higher education financial advisor at the time, who was one Randy Boyd, they put together the idea of the Tennessee Promise. And I can remember when it was going before the General Assembly, it had a lot of supporters, but there were some people who just didn't think that this could work. It was a good use of the state's resources. But as Tennesseans, I can tell you, I've never met a parent who didn't want their kid to have a great education or the opportunity to have a great job. We are forward-thinking people. We just needed a little incentive to get us going. And it took us a while to get there, to go statewide, but we had great leadership at the time. And your comment about our governor was better than your governor was really true. And it was, and it's worked out that way. But a lot of people have contributed. We're known as a volunteer state. And when you ran through those numbers related to number of mentors and number of volunteer hours, that's incredibly impressive. But it's also impressive that 100,000 young people have taken advantage of this program and improved their lot in life because a whole lot of other people encouraged them. And so this is a day we celebrate not just the core team of Tennessee Achieves and Tennessee Promise, but something for all Tennesseans that we can be proud of, not only now, but hopefully for years to come.
I agree. You know, it's insane to me how Tennessee Promise has like permeated the state. So when I tell people that, you know, people are like, oh, what do you do for a living? And I say, oh, I work for a nonprofit, Tennessee Achieves. And no one has a clue what Tennessee Achieves is, by design, by the way. It was never like the idea that everyone should know Tennessee Achieves. But if you say to someone, we run the non-financial components of the Tennessee Promise, everyone knows someone who's been touched by Tennessee Promise. That's kind of hard to wrap your brain around, considering the fact that it's only in its 6th year, right? Like this has not been around for like decades. It's 6 years old. And if you're, I mean, I was in an Uber once on the way to the airport with my family, and, you know, we were having a conversation, and this guy's like, oh, my daughter, like she was on her way to fill in the blank, but now she's, you know, so it just continues, I think, to grow and grow. And I think there will be a time when everyone will know someone who's been touched by this program, which I think is really, really cool. All right, so someone talked about the Drive 55, maybe it was the mayor. So Randy, when you were part of the Governor Haslam dream team as special advisor, the two of you came up with the Drive to 55 with this North Star of 55% post-secondary attainment by 2025. Tennessee Promise was sort of the signature program, or I believe it was the signature program, Governor. Can you talk to us about why that North Star was so important, the components of Drive to 55, and how Tennessee Achieves has played a role?
I want to come back to how I got the job. So you might wonder how an invisible fence salesman becomes special advisor on higher education. And Mike highlighted it was an unpaid advisory role. The governor and I negotiated long and hard about getting me paid or paying me what I was worth. And we agreed on 0. But
he was definitely the best available in his price range.
I think I was the only one available in this price range. But, you know, because of our passion for education, working with Knox Achieves and then Tennessee Achieves, the governor and I got to know each other on higher education and thinking about higher education reform. So I did agree for a year to work as special advisor. And the first thing you do when you take on any project is to understand what your mission is. Well, it was really interesting. As we drove around the state, I talked to over 100 different higher education leaders. And when you'd ask the mission, nobody knew. So it's really apparent that if we're going to go somewhere, we need to know where we're going to go. And the first thing is to determine what that mission was. To make a long story short, with a little research, we found that the Tennessee Higher Education Commission did have a goal by the year 2025 of reaching 42% post-secondary attainment. And at that time, 32% of the people in the state of Tennessee had something beyond high school, some certificate or college degree. I remember asking the folks at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission at the time, so how did we come up with this goal of 42%? Well, they said, well, based on our current trajectory, if we do the things we've been doing, we may end up at 32%. Okay, well, how did you get 42%? Well, the national average by the year 2025 should be 42%. Well, that's great, but where should we be? What will the workforce require us to be at to be able to meet the demands of the future? I said, oh, well, everybody knows that as well. Lumina, Gates Foundation, Georgetown have all done forecasts, and they say by the year 2025, if we're going to meet the workforce demands of our state, our population has to be at 55%. So it became pretty apparent that if we were going to serve our citizens and make sure that they were employed and have great jobs by the year 2025, we had to provide them the opportunities to achieve that kind of educational level. So we came up with a series of strategies. There were actually 5, but the second one was making sure that more students had access to affordable education. And conveniently, Chrissy, you and I and the mayor and our former mayor, now my new boss, the governor, had this experience with Tennessee Achieves. At that particular time, we were already offering 51% of the people across the state some type of opportunity to go to community or technical college free of charge. But it was only as good as our ability to raise money each year. If we failed to do that, the program would be over. And we were only able to offer it to 27 counties out of the 95. 68 of our poorest counties weren't being served. So the opportunity to be able to offer the Tennessee Promise helped make the Drive to 55 a possibility, and now looks like a reality.
So great. And we continue to make significant progress, right? I think we are at 42% the last time I heard an update from Mike Krause. So we've hit average and now pushing past that with still time remaining toward that goal. Governor Haslam, Tennessee was the first state to offer tuition-free college coupled with important layers of support to reach our most vulnerable students. While our state has made steady progress, what more do you think students need to find college success?
Well, I think the one key point I'd make is all of this is a connected circle. One of the reasons Drive to 55 is so important is to prepare for the workforce that we know we're going to need and we know we need now. But the other place the circle connects back is through K-12. And I'll steal one of Randy's line. He said, you know, access is great, but success is the goal. And it's to have actually people actually not just go to college, but complete and get a degree or certificate. And one of the reasons we have focused so hard on K-12 education efforts is we realize, okay, Tennessee Promise is wonderful, but if you get there and you're not ready, then we really haven't done you a favor. And I think the things that I'd say are kind of Tennessee's next step are continuing to try to push the ball forward in K-12. And I think that means always talking about student outcomes. In K-12, there's lots of conversation about a lot of different things from, you know, vouchers to teacher pay. It's all of it, you know, all those things are important philosophical or policy discussions. But at the end of the day, we need to have school board members and superintendents and teachers talking about better outcomes for students. And that will help us turn that, increase that percentage of the population with a degree or certificate more than anything. So I think that's it, number one. And then number two, what we've learned that, again, getting students there, that then life happens to them and, you know, their car breaks down or a parent gets sick, and being able to have the wraparound care, if you will, to intervene in situations like that when people drop out. And then finally, making certain we have the on-campus guidance and counseling for students so that they get pointed toward getting toward the right degree for them, and that when they run into those roadblocks, there's some adult there that can help them get over that hurdle.
I agree with all of those sentiments. I think having someone in your corner is probably one of the most important things that we can provide to students, especially to students who never thought that college was an option, are the first people in their family. And to make sure that bridge from high school to post-secondary feels really seamless for those students. I mean, we continue to show data related to summer melt. So how do we in Tennessee address those handoffs, if you will, where there's no caring adult to really see the student through? Speaking of caring adults, Mayor and Randy, you both have served as mentors for the past 12 years. Why do you think the mentoring component is so important? We often refer to it as the heart of the program. Mayor, we'll let you go first.
Well, it was one of our original ideas. We felt like if you didn't have the mentoring piece, it wasn't going to work as well. Because so many times, and the governor just alluded to this a little bit, it's like people need some encouragement. They need some direction. They need to know that there's someone that they can call upon. And over those 12 years, I've had quite a few students who, to be truthful with you, needed me very, very little. Then I've had a few who needed me quite a bit because they weren't aware of the processes you go through, filling out the different forms. They had all types of questions that you could imagine, simply because no one in their family had had any experience with this before, and they had nowhere to go or nowhere to turn. And so it doesn't matter if you're going to a TCAT or a community college, or even some of our four-year schools, our Tennessee Promise schools as well. It helps if you know that there's somebody there that you can lean on when you have a situation, that you can get some advice. And sometimes that advice is just, how do I find out what I should major in? Who at the school should I talk to? What happens if this situation occurs or that situation occurs? So being a mentor has been very rewarding. And it's just another part of the volunteer spirit that we have so greatly that runs throughout this state.
Thanks, Mayor. How about you, Randy?
Well, I think we know statistically that it works. A few years back, the University of Tennessee did a study that showed for every $1,000 worth of grant aid you would get, how likely you were to go to college. Well, the students that participated and graduate, the students we measured that were part of the tnAchieves program versus the control group were 400% more likely to be successful. So we know statistically that meant, and the only difference was the same dollars. The only difference was that we had a mentor. So we know statistically that the mentoring part works, but just anecdotally, as a mentor, just like Mayor Ragsdale for 12 years now, there's so many stories, a story every year in which I feel like I've made a difference in somebody's life. I'll just use one anecdote from several years back, and I'll call him Dustin to provide some privacy. But I remember meeting with Dustin and his mom at a pre-meeting before our first official meeting. I'd always invite the boys, and I've always matched with boys to pizza with their family. Dustin came with his mom, and I could tell that the father had been gone from the family for some time. The mother was struggling. Dustin was going to be the first one in his family's history to ever go to college. I met with the student counselor about 2 weeks later, and she said, in his family, Dustin's the one that really takes care of his mom, not the other way around. And about 4 weeks after that, I get a call from Dustin who tells me that he's not going to be able to go to college. He says, Mr. Boyd, my mom has left. We're not really sure where she's at, so I'm going to be living with my sister and my brother-in-law. And my brother-in-law told me, look, I'm not going to, also, Mr. Boyd, I don't have a car. And I'm not going to, my brother-in-law said, I'm not going to give you a ride to some stupid college. I'll give you a ride to Walmart if you want a job, but I'm not wasting my time taking you to a college. And that was the situation. We found some transportation, but I think, in Dustin's case and in so many of these young people, they just need somebody that believes in them. Yeah, you need to help them with the FAFSA and you need to help them with some of the technical part, but it may be strange for some people on this call to realize, but there are a lot of young people out there that never have anybody in their life that says, you can do this, and just gives them that one little word of encouragement that makes all the difference. One last thing I'll say is that mentoring has made a difference in our state. Every year, Chrissy, you and your team are training about 9,000 new mentors a year. Over this period of time, there's got to be almost as many mentors as there are students. We probably train 100,000 different people. Imagine 100,000 people across the state of Tennessee that understand what it's like to be able to go to college, how difficult it can be for some young people. They're personally engaged in the process. I think the amount of support for higher education we have in the state of Tennessee has been greatly strengthened just because of the mentoring component of this program.
Yeah, it's always surprising to me that when you say mentorship, it does feel like a really heavy lift, but we've tried to create a brand of mentoring where maybe it's just about being the first person that's taken a vested interest in the student's future. And for many students, that's all they need. Someone in their corner, someone to say, we can do this together. Obviously, it's working. So, okay, Governor, I'm going to throw over, the last question is for all of you before we go into the fun questions and then take any questions from the group. So if you do have any questions from participants, please type it in the Q&A and we will take those questions in a bit. But Governor, what's your most proud moment associated with Tennessee Promise?
I'm like all of you, there's so many students I've met along the way that flash back, but it could be, I have two that I've thought of. I remember being at a National Governors Association meeting and literally having 10 other governors walk up to me and say, how did you all do this? I've heard what you've done. And so I'd walk them through the story, but every time I'd walk them through the story, I'd think it is kind of amazing, isn't it? That, look what's happened in Tennessee. And it really started from the idea that, Mike had and talked Randy into it and then talked talk to the others, and eventually me, and then everybody that's on this call. So that's one of them. The second is, Tennessee or Knox Achieves spawned Tennessee Promise, which then I actually spawned Tennessee Reconnect, to where now any adult or anybody that's finished high school can go back. And when I was in the governor's office, a woman who worked on the housekeeping staff, and she worked on housekeeping staff, and then a couple of mornings a week she'd get there early and make eggs and toasted bacon for me. And she came to me one time and said, "I heard about this free college thing that you all got." I said, "Huh?" She goes, "Well, is it for people like me too?" And I said, "It's exactly for people like you." Well, she went back, started about halfway through her first semester. She thought, "I can't do this." Somebody at the school kind of helped her along, and I kept encouraging her. Said she'd been out of school for probably 30 years by this point in time. Anyway, long story short, she hung in there. She's just about to complete and get her degree. I'm betting the Tennessee residence is going to lose a member of the housekeeping staff because she has a couple of things that she'd like to do that she's always wanted to, but never was able to get the degree. So from that little kernel of an idea that Mike and Randy started with, the ripples keep going out from there. And it's fun to see. Like I said, Sue was a woman in her 50s who had been on the housekeeping staff at the Tennessee Governor's residence for a long time, and now is going to have a chance to maybe do something different with the remaining work years of her life.
I love that story. I've heard you tell it before. I think about all the Promise students who've also told us that their parents are going back to school with them, right? That you've got a Tennessee Promise student in school with their Tennessee Reconnect parent. And I just think about, like, it's kind of mind blowing and really, really awesome. Mayor, how about you?
Two things, I think. I was really proud the night that Governor Haslam announced the Tennessee Promise. I think it was in his State of the State address. He announced that here's a program that started in Knox County that now is going to be a statewide program. And it's something that started small, but then it was successful, not because of the 2 or 3 panelists you're talking to today, but it's successful because we bought into it as a state. Our citizens and our young people believe, here's something we can do together. We can contribute by mentoring. We can make donations to the program. This is a game changer in the sense that young people get a chance to go to college. And then it spawns things like Tennessee Reconnect and the story the governor told. I think you could tell that about countless people across our state. And then the other thing that really makes me very proud is when you see someone who's been through our program, whether they've gone to a TCAT and they're out with a great job now as a welder, plumber, pipe fitter, electrician, making a really good living and a good career, or they've gone to a community college and gone into the workforce, or many of them have gone to community colleges and then on to 4-year schools. When you see those individual success stories, that's why we started this program, and that's what Tennesseans want to see. We want to see a lot of individual success stories. And there are countless of those that are out there right now where folks had a chance to change their lives because of this program and getting engaged in it. And I think we're just getting started good. I think the Drive to 55 is going to be a success, and we're going to see Tennessee transform from a state that for many years, we're trying to stay out of last place when it related to educational statistics. And now, as Governor Haslam mentioned, people are coming from around the country to talk to folks. And Chrissy, you share this all the time. People come talk to you, want to find out, what are we doing in Tennessee? And what we're doing is we're taking advantage of the great talent that we have here to giving people an opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Mayor. How about you, Randy?
I'm going to follow the protocol that these two gentlemen did, and rather than give you one answer, give you two too. So I think the first one I'll share with Mayor Ragsdale is the day that we announced the Tennessee Promise. And maybe complete a thought that I mentioned earlier. The Tennessee Achieves is great. But at the time in 2013, 2 problems. One, we were only in 27 out of 95 counties, 68 counties that needed us the most. We weren't providing an opportunity for, mainly because I wasn't able to raise money in those counties. But the other big challenge was it really wasn't a promise. When I would raise money, we would ask donors to donate for a period of 3 years. If you had $100,000 to donate, give us $33,000 a year for 3 years. One, the first year to cover your remedial semester. Most of our students needed that. And then the next 2 years to cover their final 2 years to get their degree. But the problem with that is that we were only able to offer this scholarship to seniors in high school. And they wouldn't really say this, but oftentimes you go into a senior class and say, great news, you can go to college. And they would look at you like, gosh, if I'd only known I was going to college, I might have actually prepared myself. They just had no expectation that this would be possible. It was always a dream to think, wouldn't it be great if we had the ability to go to kindergartners to their parents and to be able to offer this so they could start beginning to prepare themselves. And so when Governor Haslam was able to announce the Tennessee Promise, that we had managed to use excess lottery funds to create a trust so this could truly be a promise, we could then go to kindergartners and their parents and say, start preparing differently, dream differently, because you now can go to college. So that was a big moment. And when he made the announcement, I happened to be there on the floor at the time, everybody in the room stood up and cheered. We're going to be able to send everybody in the state of Tennessee to technical community college for free, and it's not going to cost the taxpayers a penny. That was an amazing announcement. That was a big deal. I think then the second one, I'll just say today or last week, whenever we tripped over the 100,000th mark, I remember the first year on that back patio when we came up with this mic and said, let's go. Let's see if any students will even want to do this, if we can raise the money. And you end up with 260 something students. That's felt like an amazing accomplishment. And somewhere in the next year, I remember talking with Chrissy and thinking, wouldn't it be great one day before we die if we can send 10,000 students to college? And I thought that was a big idea. I like to have come up with big ideas for shock purposes. I thought this would be a big idea. Imagine 1,000 students. And Chrissy was unflapped. Said, let's go do it. But today, just 12 years later, celebrating 100,000 students is a really just an unbelievable and surreal accomplishment. Congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you. It wouldn't have been even sort of a possibility without the three of you. So I'm so thankful. Okay, so we have two fun questions that we're going to ask everyone that's participating. So we have, I think, maybe 14 of these. We have current students, graduate students, college presidents. So you're kicking off a week-long celebration of highlighting and celebrating our stakeholders. So these are the last two questions for me, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. But what's an important lesson that you learned on your first job? And by first job, I mean like your real first job. Like I walked in rural Warren County to the Dottie West ball field and made snow cones when I was 14. So what lesson did you learn at your very first job that still resonates? Mayor.
My first job was washing cars at Benton, Pontiac, and Buick in Cleveland, Tennessee. And while at the time I was very grateful for the job, what I learned very quickly was I didn't want it to be my long-term career. And it was awfully hot in the summer and it was awfully cold in the winter. And Mr. Benton was incredibly nice to let me work whenever I was out of school or whenever I could. But I learned if you wanted to succeed, that you had to have something more than just graduating from high school, that you had to go do something beyond that. And so I remember that quite well, thinking, I'm glad to have this job, but I don't want to stay at Benton, Pontiac, and Buick forever. It's a great opportunity. And Mr. Benton was encouraging about other things too. He wanted me to go to college, as did my mom and dad. They were so thoughtful and so supportive of me going to college. But I'm thinking, that first job is a good start, but always be looking for your next job and a better career path.
Good. Randy?
My first job was working for my dad when I was 8 years old, getting paid $1 an hour. I worked on the assembly line and swept floors. And I think there were two things I always think back on. One is being on an assembly line, you learn about teamwork. If you're on an assembly line, everybody's got their role. And if you work too slow, people all the way down the line don't have anything to do, they're waiting on you. If you go too fast, things pile up. So you had to be synchronized with the rest of your team and work as a team. And the second thing I always remembered, even then, is just how much pride that everybody else on the assembly line, everybody else in the factory took in their work. This gave me a respect for everybody and realizing that regardless of what station you are, everybody deserves respect and can take some pride in what they do.
Good lessons. How about you, Governor?
My first job won't surprise too many people. My first job was actually pumping gas, although it might surprise you if you're young enough to not remember when you used to go to the gas station, somebody else pumped your gas, you didn't do it yourself. Well, I started, I think I was 12. I think I got paid about $1 an hour, and we were laughing about this before it started. I've told Mike Ragsdale the story. I didn't know anything, and so back then, when you got gas, you checked under the hood to make sure they had enough oil, and because you tried to sell them a quart of oil, if not. And this guy, sure enough, was low, and so I put oil, but I happened to put it in the automatic transmission fluid case instead. And I realized what I'd done about 2/3, and then here's this 12-year-old boy trying to say, do I tell this guy what happened or not? So before my truth meter could check in, he happened to turn to get around and think, why am I trusting this 12-year-old in my car, and looked and saw what happened. And he gave me one of my first really, really good chewings. So my lesson would be know what you're doing. Don't think you know what you're doing. It's a lot easier to ask questions and get the right answer than it is to do what you think is the right answer and have to explain later.
Maybe that also prepared you to be mayor and governor, right? Like constituency services.
That's true. Getting yelled at early.
That's right.
You know, when Bill and I were mayors together, we spent a whole lot of time together and shared a lot of different stories like that. So I wasn't going to let him escape today without telling that story.
It's a good one. We're recording this to share with students too, so I think this will be really great and resonate. Okay, so speaking of sharing it with students, same order. One piece of advice that you would give to our next 100,000 students, because we're already preparing for those students. Mayor?
A couple of quick things. Believe in yourself, because you've got potential. You can do it. When you sign up for a program, go to class. I think one of the key things is a lot of people think, oh, I don't need to go to class today, or I can skip this class. If you go to class, you're going to be successful. And the third thing is this: there are going to be some bumps in the road. There are going to be some challenging moments. Persevere, work through them. Call your mentor. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Go see your professors, go see your instructors, and let them help you. You've got a bright future ahead, so take advantage of it.
I think that was 3 things. I said one thing. You guys are terrible at this game.
I have never
Well,
really gone by the instructions you passed out. So,
do you have 3 things too?
Well, Chrissy, I'm going to be much better. I'm going to give 2, but I've been hanging around politicians too long. I would say 1, on the community service part, make sure you do the community service, but find something that you can get passionate about. The idea behind creating a community service project is not just to have skin in the game, but also to possibly kindle some interest in giving back in general, but maybe in a particular area. So find something that's not just work or something that you do begrudgingly. Take some time, find something that you can be really involved in. You may just find something that you want to do a lot more than just your 8 hours. And the second thing, and we've talked about this throughout this program, is make sure you engage with your mentor. You have amazing mentors, people like a Governor Haslam and a Mike Ragsdale that may just be on the other end of the phone when that mentor calls. This is such an incredible resource, such a great value, and it's free. So please take advantage of your mentors, be responsive and be engaged.
Those are good. Governor, do you have 12?
So I've got 16 things. No. No, Chrissy, the first thing they teach you in politics is answer the question you want to answer, not the one they ask you. So
I like it.
It's take advantage of this opportunity to learn how people who see the world different than you do think. You know, all of us are a product of our environment, the family we grew up in, the friends we hang out with, the neighborhood we're in. And it doesn't take you very long to figure out that a lot of the world thinks really differently than we do. And one of the great things about education is taking the chance to sit back, listen, and try to understand what's causing, you know, the people that I think are just dead wrong, they're not purposely trying to be wrong, or they're not purposely trying to be different. Why do they think the way they do? And then also, my political mentor was Howard Baker, and he had a saying that said, always remember the other fella might be right. And one good thing about education is helping you learn the other folks' perspective.
I love that. That's so great. All right, Graham, do we have any questions from participants?
We do. I think I'd be remiss. The vast majority of the comments that we've received today have asked that we send a thank you to all of you, Chrissy included, our panelists and our moderator. Several stories from people here about their own children that have taken advantage, and just an overwhelming sense of gratitude. So before I ask questions, I wanted to pass that along to you. We had a question from Hunter who asked, how can Tennessee Achieves? He specifically asked about 4-H, but I'm going to expand a little bit and say outside organizations partner with Tennessee Achieves to close equity gaps, unearth systemic barriers, and increase college completion rates. whoever would like to tackle.
I'll jump in real quick and let me start with kind of the premise of the question. There are serious education disparities. There are, and the impact of that are so widespread. I think one of the reasons that I love this program so much is it's actually doing something about it. If you ask me, the best way to level the playing field, give people the chance for outstanding public education. Okay, that's the best way we have to level the playing field, period, in my opinion. So what can, whether it be 4-H or any outside group, man, have a competition to see how many of your folks can sign up to mentor. Publicize, if you're a youth serving organization like 4-H or something, publicize this opportunity to the people who are in your membership or your group. You know, it's no great secret the country is divided like never before, and it's gotten to where we're not only divided, but we're mad at the other side. And again, to me, what's going to bridge that gap is people seeing the world a little bit more from the way the other folks see it, number one. And then number two, having more of an equal opportunity. And programs like this, and actually primarily this program, can do that better than anything else I've seen.
I think maybe Chrissy might be able to speak more to some of the partnering opportunities. I can speak to the 4-H, because you know the 4-H is supported by the University of Tennessee. I think there's a lot of opportunities to get the message out about the Tennessee Promise to our 4-H programs. That's something we could probably work on. But I think the other thing is that, as the governor mentioned, the Tennessee Promise does over-index toward our lower income, more disadvantaged, more ethnically diverse, more rural communities. And so it's something that we're already making, I think, a major dent in some of the inequities we have across our state. We definitely can do better. We can definitely do more. We already are doing a lot.
All right, we've got another question from Hannah, who is tuning in from Waco, Texas. They are working to start a program. She wants to know the most important things to consider when starting a program like Tennessee Achieves, and any advice that you might have for her.
If I were giving her some advice, I would get on the phone and call Chrissy D'Alejandro and say, what were the pitfalls in this program and what are the things that you need to do to make it successful? And I think the framework is really already in place. You've got to provide, as Randy alluded to, a promise. And it's got to be something that's guaranteed that students can count on going forward. I think it's important that you have a mentor, somebody you can lean on. And the community service aspect of it, you can't undersell. It teaches you a way of giving something back for something that you're receiving. So I think the structure is already in place, and the smaller details, get them from the Tennessee Achieves office, because this is a program I think it's becoming a national model rather quickly. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I would go talk to Chrissy and see, when she can come see you in Waco, Texas, and help you kick this thing off.
Rather than have her travel, just email her and she'll send you all the information you need. We're very free with all the data, and any data that we've got, we're willing to share. I'll give 2 bits of advice. One, start small. When I've talked to other states, and I'm on a College Promise board that is trying to promote this across the country, and too often other states seem to want to go statewide on day one. Start small and build. This is the way we did it here. I think it's something that I would recommend to other states. And second, when you have the data, just make a decision and go. I know many states that are still analyzing after a half a dozen years. I think as we did with Knox Achieves, we had an idea. We were on the back porch in July. By August, we had raised the mentors, and by September we had raised the money. And by late September, we were offering scholarships to students. So it took us about 3 months to just go and figure. We're going to figure things out as we move along. You'll never have all the answers. You're going to have to count on being able to innovate and adapt as you move forward. But start small and just go.
All right, we had another question from Jessica, who asked, what are the big goals for the next 2 years?
I'll go. I don't know what, I'll let maybe Chrissy answer the official goals, but I'll say this. We're in an incredibly unique and challenging time right now because of the pandemic. And it's my estimate that our students will have lost on average a half to a whole school year worth of knowledge by the time this school year is over. Okay, so the challenge is going to be students who are coming to our community colleges a little less prepared, or maybe they've gotten out of the educational system. Our enrollment's down 5 to 10% in K-12 across the state. Some of those students have gone to be homeschooled or gone to private schools, but some of them, we don't really know what happened to them. And so the challenges that we face have just gotten bigger in the last year because of the pandemic, and we're all going to have to react to that.
Yeah, I think officially, what we're hyper focused on right now is completion. I mean, we're still very much in the access space, ensuring that we continue to provide an opportunity for all students. Again, closing those equity gaps, ensuring that every student has the opportunity to earn a credential. But we're hyper focused right now at Tennessee Achieves on ensuring all students earn a credential that provides the opportunity to enter the workforce in a thriving way. And so for us, it's about really doubling down on our coaching efforts. We have a coaching model that supports our students from the lowest income backgrounds in a proactive, measured way. We have summer programs that we're very committed to try to reduce summer melt and remediation needs. We also are very much focused on ensuring that we're measuring all of these things. Knox Promise, which the Haslam Family Foundation invested in, what can we learn from completion grant funding and textbook stipends? And so to add to the piece of advice that because Randy really stole my thunder on start moving, stop planning and start moving is the advice I always give. But I am a student of Randy Boyd after 12 years. But I would also say that everything you do, make sure you're measuring to make sure you're actually making a dent in the universe. And if you're not, scrap it and start thinking through the lens of what's best for students.
I'd like to just double down on what both Chrissy and the governor said. We are going to have a challenge with students that are even more unprepared this coming year than we've had before. And to Chrissy's point, and as the governor said earlier, it's not about access, it's about success. It's not about getting them in. We want to get them in and graduate them. And being prepared is one of the key determinants in whether they're going to be successful or not. One of the programs that Chrissy and her team have started is a bridge program, a program that helps with that remediation during the summertime. And as we think about the next couple of years, that's probably the point in which we really got to double and triple down to make sure that more students are going to need more help during the summer. So we're going to have to do more for them.
Got two questions I'm going to try to combine into one here. Lily will ask, Tennessee Promise students are fortunate to receive a mentor. What advice do you have for students to seek out mentors post Tennessee Promise? And another attendee asked about what can people be doing to support students as they're graduating looking for jobs. Maybe we can tie those together.
I don't think there's a thing in the world wrong with you asking your mentor, could you help me with some interning possibilities? Do you know any opportunities for summer work? And I can assure you that whoever your mentor is going to try and help you the very best way they can. Internships are valuable because it gives you an opportunity to look at things that you may or may not enjoy or may not can be successful at. Summer jobs help cover some expenses just related to living and other type of things. But I think it's just really important that you ask your mentor for help and advice and guidance in these type of things.
I'll throw this out.
Go ahead, Governor.
I was to say the part about finding mentors at each step along the way. I think that's a proactive search. This program is wonderful because a mentor is provided to you as you go along in businesses. They may or may not have that same kind of facilitation, but it's important to find it. I'd encourage people to go seek out, find somebody that you'd like to learn from in your company, and ask he or she, will you meet with me for coffee once a month? Whatever it is, go seek that person because Chrissy always talks about the kind of importance of one caring adult, but I think it's one other person who's willing to invest something in your career along the way is always going to be beneficial.
Most of us love to be asked for our advice and guidance. So taking on what the governor just said, I think that's important. Ask people, say, I need your advice. I need your guidance. What can you do to help me? And we're caring, giving people, and most people respond to that very positively.
Well, what I was going to add is I think that's one forward, I'm pointing this way because that's where Randy is on my screen, but it's one forward thinking component of the UT promise. Randy, right? The mentorship in the junior and senior year.
Yeah, with UT Promise, we have one mentor that helps them to get in, another mentor their first 2 years that helps them get acclimated to the campus environment, and then their final mentor to help them transition out to the workplace. I just want to support both Mayor and Governor's comments that, I think there are plenty of mentors out. This is a formal program, but there are plenty of mentors out there, people that would love to help someone be successful. People are honored when you ask them to be their mentor. And don't be embarrassed to ask somebody to be your mentor. I'm 60 years old. I'm on yet a new job, and I've got some really great mentors in this new job. I'm always thankful and usually very fortunate to be able to find great mentors everywhere along the way. So having a mentor is a lifetime pursuit, not something that you just do when you're getting started. So take advantage of anybody that's willing to support you.
Agree. Graham, I think maybe one more.
Yeah, it looks like we got time for one more. Someone asked a really kind of big question. So I think let's end with that, a big forward thinking question. They ask, since Tennessee Promise seems to show that there can be success with a program like this at the state level, should we be talking about a federal program, or how would we go about expanding programs like this across the country?
I'll just add that we did talk about America's Promise, and we actually pitched it to the former administration. But they didn't do certain things the way we suggested. We suggested a last dollar scholarship. They offered a first dollar scholarship. They didn't think the mentoring or the community service part was important. I believe that if we were doing something more nationally, those elements need to be a part of it. We need to have mentoring. The students need to have some skin in the game. And then you just can't make it affordable if it's a first dollar. It needs to be last dollar. But we're talking.
I would add, the other thing, the point we tried to make to the prior administration was, let states have some flexibility to come up with their own creative ways to make this happen. If it's a big federal program, I think it turns into a big federal program. And one of the beauties of this is how entrepreneurial it's been, how low overhead and non-bureaucratic, and how much it's been about how do we get one more student to go to college.
Well, thank you all for your time. To the participants, thank you for joining us. I've had so much fun. To the three of you, I can't say how grateful I am enough. These are three of my mentors over the last 12 years. And to say that you've changed my life would be an understatement. A poor kid from McMinnville just doesn't get to do things like this. So college made all the difference for me. And so that's what we're trying to recreate at Tennessee Achieves every day for the next 100,000 students. So thank you so much. Any final parting words?
Yeah, all that's really nice, Chrissy, but all of us know who really does all the work here.
Yes. Congratulations, Chrissy, Graham, and your team. You've had an amazing team, an amazing success, and an amazing future ahead.
Thanks to everyone who's contributed over the years, from the mentors to the students to so many people throughout our school systems, particularly in our high schools, that have just been so supportive of this program, so encouraging. It has truly been a team effort.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Happy
Have a great
Monday.
rest of the afternoon. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.